I trust you so much, my friend.
In the lawless frontier where bullets ruled the sunset, a young frontier girl found a love wilder and more unbreakable than any outlaw's gun, a silver-furred giant who would face the desert and death itself to keep her alive. Under the first glimmer of dawn, the desert stretched endless and silent, a vast plain of copper sand and bleached stone that caught the newborn sun like an ember. Clara Wynne moved carefully through the brittle sage, her worn leather boots brushing aside the silver leaves, each step a whisper against the hush of morning. She carried a burlap satchel for the herbs her mother had once gathered, though her mother was gone and the homestead long abandoned. The habit remained. It kept her steady in a land that no longer had walls. Far off, a rifle cracked, one lonely shot that carried across the dry air like a warning. Clara paused, hand to the brim of her hat, listening. The sound faded into the yawning distance where outlaw bands still roamed the wastelands, and the quiet returned, heavier than before. She let her breath out slowly and kept walking, the red-gold horizon painting her shadow long across the ground. The ruins of the old trading post appeared ahead, half buried in sand. Its adobe walls slumped inward, roof beams blackened by long-ago fire. Wind moaned through the broken doorways, and the smell of dust and sun-warmed stone wrapped around her. She stepped inside the shell of the building, eyes adjusting to the deeper shade, and bent to cut a clutch of sage sprouting through a crack in the floor. A sound rose behind her, soft, deliberate, nothing like the restless wind. She turned. At first she saw only a ripple in the shadows, a shimmer of gray moving between the fallen beams. Her breath caught. Another step, slow and heavy. Then a figure emerged, massive and strange, a great silver-furred creature taller than any man, shoulders broad as the doorway itself. A gorilla, yet unlike the circus drawings she'd glimpsed in tattered newspapers. This one was scarred and dusted with sand, eyes dark as stormwater and startlingly alive. Clara's muscles locked. Every instinct screamed to run, but she could not. The creature stood upright, a battered leather canteen dangling from one huge end. He tilted his head, as though considering her. Sunlight filtered through a broken wall and lit the faint tremor of his breath. For a long heartbeat the world shrank to that gaze, ancient, watchful, almost human. He moved first. Slowly, he extended the canteen, his arm steady despite its size. The gesture was unmistakable. Clara's fear flickered, wavered. She took a step forward, dust crunching beneath her boot. Another step. She reached out, fingers trembling, and accepted the canteen. It was warm from his grip, heavy with water. She dared a sip and tasted the clean coolness of a distant spring. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely more than breath. The gorilla blinked once, the motion deliberate, and lowered his hand. No threat, only quiet acknowledgement. They stood facing each other as the morning light deepened to gold, a strange stillness settling around them. Somewhere beyond the hills a hawk cried and the sound felt far away. Hours unfolded like a dream. Clara found herself walking the perimeter of the ruins while he followed at a respectful distance, neither of them speaking yet bound by a fragile accord. She sensed an old strength in him, a patient steadiness that belonged to mountains and storms. Occasionally he touched the earth with his knuckles, scanning the horizon as though expecting danger. Each time she glanced back, she found those dark eyes fixed on her, not with hunger, but with a watchfulness that felt almost like care. By midday the sun burned white overhead. Clara settled in the narrow shade of a wall, sharing the last of the dried berries she'd brought. The gorilla crouched a few paces away, accepting each offered piece of fruit with a careful pinch of his broad fingers. When she laughed at the delicate way he handled the food, he gave a low, rolling sound that might have been his own kind of laughter, deep enough to vibrate the sand. The desert grew still in the long afternoon. Heat shimmered off the stones, turning the air to glass. Clara drowsed against the wall, her thoughts drifting between memory and the silent figure across from her. She wondered how he had come to this barren place, escaped from some distant menagerie, perhaps, driven by storms and cruelty. She wondered if he had a name, a story, a family. The question swirled like heat haze, unspoken yet heavy with curiosity. As evening approached, a subtle tension returned to the air. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint rattle of dry grass. Clara rose, senses sharp. The gorilla straightened in the same instant, head turning toward the sound. From the brush beyond the ruins came a sudden hiss, low and dangerous. A rattlesnake uncoiled in the sand, its body a band of mottled bronze. The triangular head lifted, eyes glittering. Before Clara could move, the gorilla surged forward with startling speed. One massive arm swept between her and the snake, the other striking the ground with a force that sent dust swirling. The serpent recoiled, his fading into silence, and slipped back into the brush. The gorilla remained poised, every muscle alert until the danger passed. Only then did he ease back, shoulders lowering, breath slowing. Clara's heart pounded. She looked up into his face, seeing not menace but unwavering resolve. He had protected her without hesitation. The realization washed over her like a sudden summer rain. This creature, stranger than any she had known, carried a nobility deeper than words. The sky bled into crimson as the sun began its descent. Long shadows stretched across the sand, the air cooling to a soft dusk. Clara stepped closer, drawn by an impulse she could neither name nor resist. She reached out and laid her palm against his chest. Beneath the thick silver, for she felt the steady thrum of his heart, powerful yet calm, a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the desert itself. He stood still, allowing the touch, his dark eyes holding hers. The stars awoke one by one above them. Around the ruined trading post the night settled deep and quiet, a cathedral of silence and starlight. Clara lowered her hand but did not step away. Something unspoken had passed between them, a promise older than language and stronger than fear. The desert would remember this moment, the girl and the silver giant standing side by side beneath the endless sky, bound by a trust neither of them had sought yet both now carried. The canyon lay hidden behind a jagged curtain of stone, a hollow carved by centuries of wind where a trickle of spring water kept a stubborn grove of cottonwoods alive. Clara discovered it by following the silver gorilla's sure-footed stride, and soon it became their refuge. Days stretched into weeks, the outside world dissolving into a rhythm of whispered streams and rustling leaves. She brought fruit when she could, berries from distant thickets and peaches traded from a ghost town orchard, lowering them into the cool water of the well before he arrived. Cantu, she had begun to call him that without ever saying it aloud, waited among the shadows, patient and silent until she placed the offerings at his feet. Their language was everything unspoken. At dusk she would hum the tunes her mother once sang, notes wandering through the cottonwood branches while he kept watch at the canyon's mouth, his massive silhouette cut against the fading sky like a sentinel born of stone. When the night deepened, stars bright as hammered silver wheeled overhead and the quiet between them grew warm and certain. Sometimes Clara felt that if she listened hard enough, she could hear the world breathing through his chest. Summer's heat bore down until the stones themselves seemed to glow. The sun scoured the canyon floor, drawing the last scent of water from the air. Clara's shoulders browned beneath her worn blouse, her lips cracked, but Cantu moved with a patient strength that made the desert seem almost gentle. He brought her smooth stones cool from the stream, laid them in her palms so the chill might ease her fevered skin. In return she sang, soft and steady, each note a thread binding them tighter. But the wilderness did not yield quietly. One evening a mountain lion screamed from the ridge, a sound like torn metal that froze Clara mid-step. She glimpsed yellow eyes gleaming from the cliff. Cantu was there before she could breathe, a silent wall of silver fury. He stood broad and unyielding until the predator melted back into the dusk, leaving only the echo of its cry. Afterward Clara pressed her forehead to his arm, the coarse for smelling of rain-soaked earth, and felt his slow heartbeat answer her racing pulse. Whispers began to creep through the territory, stories carried on the wind of a demon beast haunting the mesas, of a giant who stole livestock and souls alike. Clara heard them when she ventured for supplies, hushed voices in the burned-out towns where miners once drank and died. She kept her head down and her mouth shut, concealing every trace of the canyon and the gentle giant who waited there. Fear of discovery followed her back like a shadow, but each time she saw Cantu's dark eyes light with recognition her resolve hardened. Their bond was no accident. It was necessity, destiny, something deeper than the judgments of frightened men. When the monsoon finally came, it arrived with the violence of a freight train. Black clouds rolled across the desert, devouring the sun, and the wind carried the sting of distant sand. Rain fell in sudden, punishing sheets, turning the canyon floor to a churning river. Clara clung to the cottonwood roots as the current clawed at her boots. Cantu waded through the torrent, the water rising past his waist, and scooped her into his arms. His body formed a living barricade as he climbed the slick rocks, each step a defiance of the roaring flood. She felt the tremor of his muscles beneath her palms, the thunder of his breath in her ear, and knew no force of nature could match his determination. They reached a shelf of rock high above the chaos. Lightning split the sky, revealing the canyon transformed into a boiling sea. Clara buried her face against his shoulder, the smell of rain and warmth for anchoring her against the storm. He crouched beside her through the night, shielding her with his vast frame while wind howled like a chorus of ghosts. When exhaustion finally claimed her, it was with the certainty that he would never let the dark take her. Dawn crept in on a brutal silence. The floodwaters had drained away, leaving the canyon scarred and unfamiliar. Clara stirred, stiff and cold, and reached for the comforting weight of him. Her hand met only damp stone. She opened her eyes to emptiness. The cottonwoods dripped in the weak sunlight, their leaves trembling as if in grief. From somewhere deep within the canyon came a low, distant call. Haunting, resonant, already fading. "Cantu," she whispered, her voice swallowed by the echo. She stumbled to her feet, scanning the broken landscape. No shadow moved among the rocks, no silver glint of fur. Only the memory of his warmth lingered on her skin. The world that had felt so alive with their quiet companionship was suddenly vast and hollow. She called again, louder this time, her plea ricocheting off the canyon walls until it dissolved into the morning air. Silence answered. The spring still trickled beneath the stones, carrying away the last footprints they had shared. Clara pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the quick, lonely beat of her own heart and imagining another rhythm far away, steady and unyielding, like the echo of a promise she could not let die.